As Vice Chief Terry Teague from
Chief Terry Teague, what'd he have to say?
from British Columbia Assembly of First Nations explained to the committee, and I'm quoting, "In my language, we call the RCMP Nilchukun."
Nilchukun. I like that. It's got a nice ring to it. Thanks, Chief.
Which interpreted in our language is those who take us away.
Clinton Jaws, the report is in, the findings are in, the recommendations are in. Systemic racism meetings, I think they're over. They're finally over. They did them for a year. And now this lady, I don't know her name, we'll call her Nancy. I honest to God don't know her name, but she's going to discuss the findings and recommendations out of all those meetings after meetings after meetings after meetings after meetings after meetings. And I'm kind of excited. Because maybe they found evidence that there isn't systemic racism in policing or there isn't systemic racism in the RCMP. You never know, right? So I'm excited. I haven't seen what she is going to say because it's kind of lengthy. So I thought I'd just come down here, turn on the tape recorder, and let's hear what she has to say. This might be a good day.
Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome, Nancy.
I'd like to start by acknowledging that we're on the traditional territory of the Algonquin people.
See, right away I'm pissed off. She had an opportunity to get up and talk about the tragic loss of Constable Shelby Patton. She's been talking about policing for the past year. You think those would be her first words out of her mouth? How about a moment of silence or something, some kind of acknowledgement? Instead, she'd rather talk about what piece of land she's standing on. That just... Keep on going.
This morning, our committee tabled a report on systemic racism in policing. Mm-hmm. Our committee began the study almost a year ago, and today we'll share some of the findings. As Vice Chief Terry Teague from
Chief Terry Teague, what'd he have to say?
From British Columbia Assembly of First Nations explained to the committee, and I'm quoting, "In my language, we call the RCMP Nilchukun."
Nilchukun. I like that. It's got a nice ring to it. Thanks, Chief.
Which interpreted in our language is those who take us away. The relationship between police officers and the people they serve is a
Jesus Christ. What'd she say? People take us away? That's terrible.
Language we call the RCMP Nilchukun, which interpreted in our language is those who take us away.
Oh my God. We're off to a great start, aren't we? Where's this going? Well, I hope somebody set him straight. You know what I mean? Did somebody set him straight? Can you imagine going through life thinking that? What a dumb comment. It's such a stupid comment. The RCMP are known people who take us away. You know, does he still believe this? Who knows? Who knows if he still believes this? I remember working one day, and I don't know if I told this story before, but I went past a mom and dad, and they had a little kid. And they say to the kid, "Yeah, it's what happens. That's what happens when you're bad. The police will come to your door, come and get you." And I turned to the kid and I said, "You could be as bad as you want. I'll never do that to you." I hate it when parents put fear into children's minds about police. They lie about police. They don't realize, they probably think they're being funny, but they don't realize what they're doing. So I hope the chief doesn't think that anymore.
The relationship between police officers and the people they serve is fundamentally about trust. This report tries to offer solutions to rebuild trust and advocate for stronger mechanisms to ensure accountability for officers when they violate that trust. The RCMP must have more effective civilian oversight body.
That's scary, right? That's scary.
To achieve this, we must...
People that know nothing about policing need more authority, right?
properly resource and empower the Civilian Review and Complaints Commission for the RCMP, also known as the CRCC, to
Okay.
better hold the RCMP to account.
They need to hold the CRCC needs more power.
Dr. Alan Benson, Chief Executive Officer of Native Counselling Services of Alberta, explained the CRCC needs the power to impose sanctions or consequences.
What?
Recommendations in this
Rewind that just a titch. Sorry, guys. I got to hear that.
explained the CRCC needs the power to impose sanctions or consequences.
Okay. I hope the MPF is watching this. You do not ever want to give the CRCC power to impose sanctions, or you guys are done. Do you know how these guys think? Do you know who the chair of the CRCC is? Maybe I'll show a clip. If I show the clip, there might not be any volume for a few seconds for those on Spotify.
All right, is that better? I need to speak to you today on the subject.
Now you need to hold the microphone back from your...
OK. Et d'habitude, on envoie 2500 à 3
I'm not getting translation. Sorry, I'm not getting translation, Chair.
Oh, sorry. Translation, because I'm not sure how to change to the French piece. So
That's the lady who runs it. These are the people that are going to sanction you, police. I've reviewed their reports. They're insane. They got mad at the RCMP for an RCMP member knocking on somebody's door, and they called that trespassing. If they have the power to sanction you, you're done. You're done. It's the reports are lunatic behavior type style reports. Like somebody literally writing a report that suffers from mental illness. That's what the reports look like. I can't find the reports anymore. It seems like they've taken them down, basically. I don't know why. I don't know why there's so much secrecy. These systemic racism meetings were open to the public since June 2020. December 7th was the last one that they opened to the public. After December 7th, 2020, the rest of them, there was like 10 more, all closed to the public. And they want the RCMP to be accountable. Shouldn't they be transparent? How did they come up with these recommendations? Shouldn't have that been transparent? How did you come up with the findings? Were we not allowed to see how you did it? Why'd you close it off? I did a video that proved. Maybe I'll put a card up to show you what video I want you to watch. It's about the CRCC. And they actually proved by accident that there was no evidence of systemic racism in the RCMP. Laffy, whatever it is, she came out and she upset everybody because she said, everybody, all our complainants, which is a lot of them are bad guys, right? The bad guy goes to the police. They say, investigate this. I didn't like how I was treated. The police say, no, you were treated fine. They go to the CRCC. They do their investigation. Laffy comes out and says, nobody is complaining about racism. Nobody. No one is. They're not complaining about systemic racism. None of them are saying. This happened to me because of the color of my skin. That outraged this committee. And maybe that's why they started making all the meetings private. Okay, I'll settle down.
Recommendations in this report state
And I know I need a haircut, okay? Stop it.
The chairperson of the CRCC herself referred to the process of filing a complaint as, quote, excessively bureaucratic and difficult to navigate.
Oh, give me a break.
According to Dr. Benson, this makes the complaint process, quote, consequently inaccessible for those who might otherwise file. We agree with the chairperson's assessment and want to see the CRCC become a more diverse organization. I'm going to turn now to our chair of our committee, John McKay.
Oh, my God.
Thank you.
I didn't even know this guy was
Pam,
going to talk.
And I appreciate the opportunity to offer a few observations to what I consider to be a very significant report into one of Canada's premier institutions.
You guys did such a good job.
I tabled this morning, the report was titled Report on Systemic Racism in Policing, and largely focused on the RCMP. Indeed, the Mounties are associated with Canada around the world, and the world associates Canada with the Mounties.
Not anymore. You ruined
However,
that.
there is a season and a time for a reckoning for every country and its institutions.
What the hell does that mean? I'm not even smart enough to figure... It's going to be all wordy, okay? Okay, we already know that they believe there's systemic racism in policing. We're not going to hear an example. Maybe we will hear an example today. We just might. But I bet you it's going to be all wordy. They're going to throw out these big words, guys.
This, in my judgment, is a time for Canada to have a reckoning with itself and with its premier institutions.
What does that mean?
The RCMP was founded as a quasi-military institution.
What year are we talking? Why isn't he talking about today?
And in some respects, has never left that mandate.
Oh, which ones? Which respects? He's not going to tell you.
Canadians, however, are looking for something different.
No.
A police service. And therein lies a significant difference. I commend to all
Are you confused?
Those who are reading the report recommendations number 8 and 9, which encourages the transition from a quasi-military institution to a police service with civilian oversight.
Oh, yeah.
Recommendations 1 to 7 deal with the dysfunctional relationship between the Civilian Review and Complaints Commission.
Well, dysfunctional. You're damn right it's dysfunctional. Okay.
RCC and the RCMP.
Yeah, well, you can't reason with crazy, McKay.
Pam was understated in her comments about the dysfunctionality of this relationship. The commissioner for the CRC...
Oh, here we go. Technical difficulties.
These requests were not handled in a timely fashion.
Okay, yeah.
If they were handled at all...
Who cares? Get on with it.
They were handled in an unsatisfactory manner.
Yeah.
And frequently, any requests or recommendations were left to die.
Wow, you guys sure got to the bottom of this, didn't you?
This has to stop.
Has to stop. Enough is enough.
As chair of the committee, I was struck by the forcefulness of the commissioner for the CRCC and her dissatisfaction.
We're going to be here all day
with the RCMP. So my colleagues will talk about, no doubt,
what
other elements of
Proof?
the recommendations,
Evidence?
all of which I think the committee worked hard on. And I want to recognize the hard work of everyone on the committee. There was a minimum of partisanship and rancor. This committee did what it was supposed to do. It took in evidence.
Took in evidence? What evidence? What evidence? That there isn't systemic racism? That nobody's really complaining? about race except for these people?
In terms of the RCMP, I must highlight that the Commission's lens tends to focus on individual allegations of bias, discrimination, or racism. We do not get complaints of systemic racism as a rule.
And she just proved that there really isn't systemic racism because nobody's really complaining about it. Did you hear that? It's kind of a big deal, isn't it? We do not get complaints of systemic racism as a rule, huh? What do you mean? You're telling me that people aren't complaining? All your complainants the bad guys aren't complaining about systemic racism? Now, this committee watching that, hearing this, they don't like that. They don't like hearing evidence. What? No. You watch the reaction to what she's saying.
On average, we receive 3,000 to 3,500 complaints per year, and we tend to send about 2,800 of those complaints over to the RCMP. Over the course of the past 5 years, we've received 76 complaints that deal with bias, racism, or discrimination.
Bias, racism, or discrimination. So 76 cases of it. We don't know how many cases of racism. She lumps it together with bias and discrimination and racism. 76 complaints. Let's just go ahead and say it's 76 complaints of racism, which it isn't. Now think about that for a second. 3,500 cases a year. That's 17,000. It's around 17,000 complaints that they have dealt with in the past 5 years. Out of all those cases, they got 76 cases of people complaining about racism. That's it. Now, you better believe the people listening to this, and you're going to hear it, they didn't like the sounds of that. She just told you that nobody's complaining about systemic racism. Kind of a big deal, isn't it?
Donc, c'est quand même,
I was just asked by one of the members to repeat that last statistic.
Thank you, John. So this ratio is minor if we look at the total number of complaints.
Ms. Lahai, can you please clarify for me again the number of complaints that you get and how many you get based on race and discrimination? That number is quite low. I mean, can you just clarify,
You need more clarification, right? Just clarify. Okay, can you please clarify? Clarify what?
Clarify, given that there's a clear differential of results of racialized people, I hope you're not concluding that since there's low number of complaints based on racism, that there is little or no systemic racism within the RCMP.
I hope you're not. I hope you're not concluding that because that would be very racist of you, you white privileged lady.
I just want to I'm trying to understand the statistics.
They started doing these meetings on 3 files. Chief Adam Allen. Investigation complete. The tackle was fine within the guidelines of the RCMP. Car door. Investigation complete. Deemed an accident, which it was. Wasn't racist. Chantal Moore went at a cop with a knife, attacked him with a knife. Justified shooting. No racism. George Floyd is another reason why they started this. So what if those things are deemed not racist, then haven't they been working on a fairy tale basically for the past year? And they complain about the CRCC being dysfunctional with the RCMP. You guys are focused on something that's dysfunctional. That doesn't even make sense, that you haven't even proved, that you can't even come up with an example of systemic racism in policing. What policy and procedure is racist? Just name me one. Give me one that makes all of RCMP systemically racist. You tell us what policy and procedure you want us to change. Give us an example what exactly it is that you want us to change.
And then produced, after a lot of hard work, the report that you see before you today. So may I recommend to you that report, and hopefully this will constitute a path forward to address the racism in policing in Canada.
Racism in policing in Canada. Please tell me.
Merci beaucoup, John. Ça m'a fait un grand plaisir de vous joindre aujourd'hui pour parler de 2 recommandations en particulier
Obviously edited in this part
de ce rapport du comité. Tout d'abord, les recommandations 41 et 42 qui s'agit de la question de l'importance
We
des
already
données
know what land you're
désagrégées.
standing on.
If we are going to
Oh, thank God.
fight and combat systemic racism that exists in institutions such as the RCMP,
first we have to figure out which part is racist, right? If you're going to combat it, right?
you have to make sure that you're collecting the data necessary to measure where you are. You
Oh, you're admitting there is no data, so you can't measure it. Okay.
just simply can't
Then how did you determine that there is systemic racism in policing if there's no data?
You're collecting the data necessary to measure where you are. You just simply can't change what you can't measure. And so I'd like to compliment the members of the Public Security Committee, under the
You can't change what you can't measure. Well, then why are you changing shit?
chairmanship of Mr. McKay, and all the members who worked very hard.
Yeah, okay, you worked
to
hard.
making sure that they heard
Bravo.
from witnesses who were particularly concerned about how to
Mercy.
ensure that the path forward will lead to less systemic discrimination, anti-Black racism, anti-Indigenous,
Anti-Indigenous.
policing
I said
that
right.
could
Indigenous.
exist, that does exist in our system.
Oh, it does. It exists.
Sorry,
guys.
Will lead to less systemic discrimination, anti-Black racism, anti-Indigenous policing
Police.
that could exist, that does exist.
Oh, that could. That does. It could. It does. He's not even certain.
In our system.
Oh, it does. How?
We know
could,
that
it
our
does.
justice and public security institutions have marginalized Indigenous peoples, Black and racialized people in Canada.
Okay.
The overcriminalization of people of color perpetuates systemic racism and leads to worsening outcomes. The overcriminalization of
The overcriminalization.
people of color perpetuates systemic racism.
There's too much crime. They're committing too much crime. Therefore, is that their example? They're committing the crime. Police are arresting them. They go to jail. And that's your fault, police officers, that they're committing crime. It's over crime. They're committing too much crime.
Our government is committed to building a more inclusive Canada, which
Do you even understand what he's talking about?
means we must seek more effective ways to shape policing.
Which ways?
Et si je peux juste citer les deux recommandations qui étaient dans le rapport, qui étaient vraiment importantes, c'est
I don't
que
speak French,
le
okay? I don't
gouvernement
understand what
du
he's saying.
Canada
That's why I'm doing
s'assure
this.
qu'une analyse raciale critique soit appliquée à toutes les
I
données
like French
policières
people, okay?
désagrégées,
Love French people.
fondées sur la race,
Especially the girls.
recueillies afin d'éviter que la façon dont elles soient utilisées, qu'elles sont utilisées plutôt,
But there are French people that watch us.
marginalisent davantage les personnes racialisées et les autochtones.
10-4.
Ça, c'est une recommandation clé.
Mhm.
Et deuxièmement, c'est qu'il travaille dans cette direction.
Yeah.
Il faut qu'on continue.
Mm.
Les recommandations de ce rapport vont s'assurer que le Parlement
I wouldn't go
canadien
that far.
va vraiment éliminer le racisme
Ouch.
avec nos forces policières.
Mm.
Merci. Maintenant,
Merci.
j'aimerais céder la parole à ma collègue de Saint-Laurent, Cartierville, Emmanuela Lambropoulos.
Mhm.
Merci, Greg. Ce n'est plus Cartierville, c'est juste Saint-Laurent. Ce rapport est extrêmement important. Et puis, comme on le sait, la police agit en tant que garde. Come on.
I had to fast forward this.
Merci, Emanuela. Good morning, everyone. A little
Oh,
over
yeah.
a year ago,
Here we
death
go.
of George Floyd shook the
See? You see what I mean? We're talking about something that happened in the United States. Okay, it shook the world, yeah.
entire world.
Yeah.
Knowing full well that Canada is not immune to racism, and after learning the
Because that'd be racist, right? It's racist to say there is no systemic racism in policing. That's racist. She's letting you know that.
horrifying incidents involving the RCMP and the Indigenous people,
Hold on a second.
racism, and after learning the horrifying incidents involving the RCMP,
Horrifying incidences involving the RCMP. Canada, you're just going to sit there. We're not going to do anything about it. We'll just go by our day, right? I can't believe it. Which ones? Against the RCMP, maybe, eh? Against a police dog. and a young police constable that was at the top of his game. That's horrifying.
Death of George Floyd shook the entire world. Knowing full well that Canada is not immune to racism, and after learning the horrifying incidents involving the RCMP and the Indigenous people, my colleagues and I on committee.
Yeah. There's been a couple of horrifying moments with the RCMP and Indigenous people. Care to tell us which ones you're talking about?
Set out to better understand the presence of systemic racism in policing in Canada and the impact it has on Indigenous, Black, and racialized Canadians. I've seen this impact close up in my own community of Brampton, where DeAndre Campbell, a young Black man, and Ijaz Chaudhry, an elderly Muslim Canadian, represent just two of the many stories of people who were taken from their families and communities far too soon.
See how she does that, guys? DeAndre Campbell was ruled a justified shooting. They go to his house. He's suffering from mental illness. He has a knife. He's fighting with his mom. Police shot him. They tried to taser him. That didn't work. So they shot him. It was justified. But she wants you to think it was cold-blooded murder. These are the people that have been doing these meetings for the past year. In her mind, from a couple of examples she just said, police are racist, systemically.
Their deaths were avoidable and serve as a...
Their deaths were avoidable. She's a police officer. She's telling you why weren't they avoided? Is it the police fault that he had schizophrenia? That he's fighting with his mom and that he's holding a knife? How avoidable? How is that avoidable? How? How does she know that? She doesn't know it.
Constant reminder of the work that remains.
Oh,
one of the
there's more work to be done, guys. More work to be done.
Things that we heard throughout this study and was identified
that nobody complained about systemic racism, that the complainants actually didn't complain, that they didn't think, that they didn't even bring it up. They didn't even bring it up. They didn't even say, this happened to me because of the color of my skin. They proved that.
As a major challenge for police services with the increasingly number of police interactions in responding to crises related to mental health or wellness checks. The committee heard extensive...
That's because the police are cleaning up your mess. People refuse to help people that are suffering from mental health in this country. They let them roam the streets. They call them homeless. They're not homeless. They're suffering from mental health and drug addiction. Nobody's helping them. The police are forced. They're the experts. They're specialized because they do it every day. That's all police do, is deal with people that are suffering from mental health. And some people who suffer from mental health, they could be killers. They could kill you. They could cut your head off on a bus. You could just be sitting in a bus and they could cut your head off, some of them. Are you mad at me for saying that? It's just the truth. They can be dangerous. She doesn't want anybody suffering from mental health dying. I don't either. So how about you fix their mind? Focus on that. The root of the problem.
On the need to have concrete, culturally specific mental health, addiction, and social service support to respond to the crisis or to prevent them altogether.
Yeah, get the funding. Build some institutions. Save these people.
And to encourage...
Take their rights away, okay? You're not allowed to roam this street with a crazy mind. How about that? I've said it before, I'll say it again. You get schizophrenia tonight. You walk out of your house. Do you not want somebody to come and apprehend you and fix you? You don't want them releasing you from the hospital. You've given up your job. You've given up your house. You've given up your children. But they give you the power to leave that hospital and roam the streets. You don't really want that, do you? I'm not going to get into this again.
Urge the use of personnel specialized in victim services, mental health, who would be available with first responders in situations requiring de-escalation that are tailored to address the needs of the specific communities involved, so that we can continue to construct a Canada in which all Canadians, regardless of their race, identity, feel safe at their homes, in their communities.
Well, not everybody's going to feel safe. Bad guys are not going to feel safe. But I would say all Canadians, do you fear the police, guys? Are you sitting at home shaking in your boots? Like, really? I'm pretty darn certain that Canada feels pretty safe of their police forces. She wants you to think that they're not.
Mi'kma'ki, the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people.
Okay.
I want to take a quick second. I'm the newest member of this committee, and I wanted to take a moment to thank my colleagues, the colleagues who spoke before me today that did the heavy lifting, the mammoth work to get this report across the finish line. So thank you very much to those folks who spoke before me.
Mammoth.
Look, it's no secret that Canada's institutions, most of which were born from colonialism.
Oh, here we go. Here we go. Oh, Lord. All the institutions, those firefighters, I tell you, biggest racist sons of guns ever, aren't they? Every institution.
We're designed with the cards stacked against Black, Indigenous, and racialized people.
Okay. But can we talk about today? Okay? Can we talk about today?
We know that this systemic racism continues to persist.
How? How's that?
In these institutions.
How?
It continues to persist within the
Give me an
justice
example.
system.
How?
And in police departments right across the country.
Okay, tell me how.
We know that the government has been paying very close attention to this study, and as our government continues to work towards a more inclusive country, we have to ensure that transforming these institutions is at the forefront of that work.
Yes.
The recommendations in this report are meant to be helpful, not only for our government, but for all orders of government and police departments across the country.
Okay.
It's important that all orders of government step up and tackle this issue within their
Head on.
respective jurisdictions.
Head on.
I thank you very much
What?
for attending
That's
today,
it?
and I will pass it over to Pam to wrap up.
God. I thought we were going to learn about the recommendations.
There were 42 recommendations in the report.
Oh, Lord.
We have not been able to go through all of them in limited time.
Well,
There's
you haven't
training,
gone through any of them.
recommendations around training,
Training.
increased diversity.
More training, guys. You guys need better training. More training, okay? More training. Better training. More de-escalation, okay? You need more de-escalation skills, guys. Better training. Your training is racist.
We heard from 53 witnesses. We've received 21 briefs, and we'll be pleased to take questions now if anyone has any.
Oh, God.
Thank you. We have a question from Mia Rabson from the Canadian Press.
What are you going to say,
Please go
Mia?
ahead. Your line is now open.
Hi. Yes. Good morning.
See, I wonder if I could call in, you know?
Mr. McKay, you talked about being struck by the force.
You know, hi, Mrs. What's her name? I don't know. And Nancy. Nancy, I'm just curious. Can you give me one example? If you were to change one policy in the RCMP, that's racist. You got to identify that one. Or procedure, okay? Tell me, which one would it be?
Of the chair of the CRCC, and I'm just wondering if you could expand a little bit on what you would like to see. I've seen some of the recommendations, but it seems like one of the biggest issues is that the CRCC recommendations just aren't being implemented whatsoever. I'm just wondering if you could expand on that a little bit.
Why?
Yes, I've been, as you know, been around the Hill for quite a number of years.
Isn't it weird all they're doing is talking about the CRCC? I thought we were going to talk about systemic racism in policing.
Quite a number of committees, and it's seldom been my experience that commissioner and efficacy.
Sorry, guys, I got to edit this part out.
Least subtle. And so you'll take note that the first 7 recommendations, dare say, and that might be job 1 that are submitted through the CRCC.
Wow.
Thank you. And I'm also wondering.
Sorry, could I add something to that?
Oh, please do.
Sure.
I don't think families should have to wait that long, and I think we all feel that any recommendations that are made must be implemented.
Hold on a second.
Thank you.
And
Can I?
any recommendations that they make must be
That are made must be implemented.
Well, that's power.
Thank you. Can I just ask that when you take to the mic that you identify yourself, because those of us not watching on television.
It's Nancy.
I'm sorry.
Nancy?
I'm sorry.
Nancy.
That was Pam DAMOFF speaking.
Okay, thank you.
Oh.
I'm just also wondering, when this study began last spring, there was some criticism that it was just another stalling tactic, that we knew what the problems were. We know that systemic.
We know. Oh, they got these people asking the questions. We knew what the problems were, guys. We knew.
We knew what the problems were. We know that systemic racism is a problem in policing, and that we weren't going to identify anything new with this study.
You didn't.
Just wondering if a year later, anyone on the committee feels that nothing new was uncovered, or if this really was a beneficial exercise.
No. It was
It's Pam
mammoth.
DAMOFF speaking again. I think
Mammoth what we did.
what was known throughout the country was that systemic racism exists, and particularly by those who have come in contact with police services across.
That aren't complaining about racism. Okay. The CRCC investigates thousands upon thousands of reports. Nobody's complaining about racism. This is unbelievable. Working on a fairy tale.
Throughout the country was that systemic racism exists. Dr. Alan Benson put it very well, that there needs to be accountability, but also, very importantly, there needs to be consequences when people are not behaving as they should when they're doing their job.
Can you give me an example? Which one? There should be consequences against you guys. Well, isn't there? Holy shit. Don't you think there is consequences with excessive force when a police officer uses excessive force when he shouldn't? Trust me. If a police officer uses excessive force and doesn't have a right to use that force, they're punished harshly.
And may I, as Sean McKay again,
and in a lot of cases, they're punished even when they're justified. Do you guys get any of this? Like, when you actually think about it and you look at the big picture, there's systemic racism in policing. They're actually telling you that police are over-arresting a certain type of group. It's such bullshit. You start your shift, you don't want to arrest anybody. Take your mat. You've got both shots.
The next question is from Tom Korski from Blacklock's Reporter. Please go ahead. Your line is now open.
Okay, 3 minutes. I'll make it short.
Thank
John
you.
McKay, you said last year, I'm quoting, in the United States, possibly even other police forces here in Canada, the unions have frequently been a huge problem, particularly protecting officers who by any other circumstances should have been let go, unquote. Report doesn't use the phrase police unions. Can you comment?
These are the questions, guys. You know what I think? I think that they started this committee knowing that systemic racism exists in policing, so they already knew it, so that's why they never tried to prove it. They all went into the meeting. Everybody knows that systemic racism exists in policing, so there's no point to prove it. They already know it. They just know it because they don't even know why they know it. They just think it. This wasn't even about systemic racism.
Which a call for more accountability, more transparency, more training, and a whole variety of things that hopefully will militate against the very issues that we saw and we see in the United States on a regular basis.
Hey, man, don't put down the United States.
Follow-up, Mr.
Okay?
McKay.
This guy's going to put down the United States. What a jerk off. What a jerk.
There's nothing in this report that says there's systemic racists. It says that the institution themselves have systemic racism, and that's the focus.
This is so stupid. This is so stupid, man. The institutions have systemic racism, but we can't exactly point to where. Here it is, guys. She said there's 42 of them, right? I don't know if you could see this. Yeah, there's 42. 42 recommendations. I'm not reading these right now, but I'm gonna. This is what the study came out and said. There's 42 of them. Ensure indigenous investigators are involved where the complaint involves indigenous people. And why would you do that? You get to pick the race of the cop? I can't get into this. This will just consume me for the day. It'll drive me nuts. She's so full of shit, her last comment piece. They are saying that members in the RCMP are racist. Because this is recommendation number 5. That the RCMP implement effective ongoing training and disciplinary policies for RCMP officers in order to prevent systemic racism and racial profiling. And require the RCMP to publish and blah, 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 blah. I can't get into this. I'm not doing this. The government explore the possibility of ending contract policing with the RCMP. This is what it's all about. Bringing down the RCMP. Oh, listen to this one. RCMP established programs and revise policies to encourage officers who are stationed in First Nations. I thought you couldn't say First Nations anymore. Métis, Inuit, and Northern communities to accept longer postings in order to better establish ties with the communities they are serving. No, that's not fair. Believe me. Do you want them to all be wingnuts? Every cop? North, guys. That's tough shit up there. Do not expect them to accept longer postings up there. Oh, I love this. That they decriminalize the simple possession of illicit drugs as called upon the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police and public health officials. That they pardon all individuals convicted of simple possession of illicit drugs. What does that have to do with racism? Restorative justice programs are effective and available to indigenous, black, and other racialized people throughout the country. Because restorative justice works, right? Give me a fuck. It worked for the 12 and 14-year-olds, right? Shooting at police over there in the United States. Constantly given a free card out of jail. Restorative justice can kiss my ass. A police officer just gets killed. And they're talking about restorative justice. Overpopulation of a certain group in jail. Frustrating. It's frustrating to sit here and read this. And I don't want to do it anymore. I don't want to talk about this anymore. So let's just call it a day. Thanks for watching. I don't even know if I'm going to post this because, well, I don't think it was any good. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.